team. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make this Jesus style design and mock-up. Now this is the base in understanding the style. I want you to take it and make it better and make it your own. So this is a fairly simple and easy process. Go ahead and launch Photoshop for today's project. The dimensions are going to be 2450 by 2700 at a DPI of 300. And go ahead and ensure artboards are checked. Import your image and just simply cut it out using a mask. Now I forgot to record this part, but I went in with a brush and just drew in the hair, because when you mask things out you can't really mask out the individual hair follicles. So go in with a brush, a really soft and small brush, and just draw in the hair. Press T or select T in the tools panel and introduce some type. For this, you want to get a nice cursive type for your design because it matches the whole vintage aesthetic and the whole Jesus aesthetic when it comes to this look. Now the typeface I'm going to be using is Edwardian script. The reason why is because it's plain, it's simple, and it gives us room to add textures and stuff to it. Talking about effects and textures, go ahead and right click your typography, select the blending options, and then start working with your type. We're going to be introducing two stroke options. One of them is going to be really thick and white, and one of them is going to be another thick outline outside of the white. Essentially, we're just creating an offset, which is easier to do in Illustrator, but since this is a Photoshop tutorial, I'm going to show you guys the full process. Let's start off by introducing the white outline. So go ahead and add that stroke in and make sure it's set to color. Set that to around 16 to 20 depending on your artboard size, and go ahead and introduce a new stroke by pressing the plus icon on the stroke options. Make sure the stroke is on the outside also, because if it's in the center it's going to look really weird. It's going to start cropping it in, so keep that in mind. Go ahead and introduce the other stroke and do the same exact steps, but make this one black and set it to around 28 to like 36. And it gives it this really nice offset path look. Just to be safe, go ahead and make a duplicate by dragging down and holding Option or pressing Command C, Command V, and getting the top one and converting that into a smart object, mainly because we want to warp it and make some effects with it. Now using the warp tools at the top of the Photoshop bar, you can go ahead and add a curve or any sort of effect that you want. This is going to allow us to make that generic looking curve when it comes to hoodies and allow us to frame the design really nicely. Now we don't want the head to just be floating in space, so go ahead and select the lasso selection tool or press L on your keyboard and make a new layer and go ahead and make this crazy sort of sunburst effect. Take your time on this because I rushed this and it looks kind of off, but this allows us to basically add a background to our image, but without having to draw in clouds or anything with some brushes, because we want this to be hard edge, sort of grungy aesthetic, because that's the look we're going for in relation to this Jesus piece. Select a nice trendy color like green or very highlighted pink or purple, just because it matches a really heavy TikTok audience. Drop that layer underneath all the other layers. Now the one key goal for this design aesthetic is you want it to be very busy. So go ahead and grab the duplicated typeface that we made before and introduce a new slogan or sort of reference to Jesus, something that relates to the whole image or theme that you're going for. After trying out multiple options, I landed on this Isaiah 26:3 verse, but I'm going to change the typography just because I want something else at the bottom, and we're going to be adding some effects to this. I settled on this typeface called Desmalarius because it looks good and it adds to that whole biblical looking theme. Now, because this is still a live text layer, when you warp it and move it up and make it bigger, Photoshop adjusts the size also in relation to the strokes. So you're going to have to go in and make the stroke a little bit smaller just to match the rest of the design and the typography at the top. Now I want to frame this design. Usually in Illustrator, I'll just grab like a flame mockup that I have and just drop it in. But I'm going to be hand drawing these flames and it looks very weird when you hand draw flames in. Make a new layer, get a very hard brush and set it to around 4 and 5. And then angle your typography going upwards because it's easier to draw flames upwards rather than side to side. Go in with a brush and just draw in that type really nicely. Use an offsetted color like orange, pink, green, or red, because you don't want it to be blended in the background if you use something like black, and you can change the color later anyway. Go ahead and select the paint bucket tool and fill in your shape. Once you've got that filled in, make sure you put everything back where it was so it looks correct. Now essentially once you have that finished, go into the blending options and apply the same effects that we did for the type to the flames. So that's basically just changing the color fill and adding a stroke to make it look like it's offsetted. Essentially we have the front piece done. Now we're just gonna remove some of the colors, make it look like a drawing, and then finally recolor it in. Now we want this to look hand drawn, so go into filter gallery and select the crayon one, and this is going to allow us to make it look like it's vintage or old style on paper. Play with these settings until you got your image how you want it to look like, mainly because I found out you can't use the same settings for every single image due to light, exposure, and how it's positioned. So for me, these settings worked perfectly, and you can see how it looks like it's vintage printed on a piece of, I guess, old newspaper. Next, I want you to turn off the green layer for this and introduce a threshold in the adjustments panel, and play with this threshold until it shows enough detail but not too much where it's just basically blurring out the blacks from the typography and it's looking nice and sharp. Now this is going to be your line layer or your black color layer. Go ahead and introduce a new layer. Go to select color range and go to drop down and select shadows. Now you can play with these adjustments to see how it fits, but I like to keep them all generic and neutral. Make sure your color is set to black and you have the paint bucket selected, and on that new layer fill in the shadows and selections that you made, and basically it's going to make the image that we have already into a full complete image. You can't go back and edit this now, but we have a complete black layer or line layer where we can start coloring in our image. Now your layer panel should be looking quite full at the moment, so go ahead and select everything that's turned off, that we've turned off, and group that all in case we have an emergency. Now basically this is the way I also color. Basically for this Jesus head, I want you to turn it back on, hold command and click on it, and basically it's going to make a selection, introduce a new layer, grab the paint bucket tool and make it white and fill that in, and you have a separation between the background and the Jesus head where you can start introducing new colors. Keep this selection layer on and then start introduce the colors like green on top of the thorn headband, mainly because you don't want it to be coloring the outside of the image, and it's just easier, so you can go ham and just start going crazy on the colors. Using that rule of selection by pressing command and the layer that has the image on it, you can go ahead and color in the typography fairly simply. Just click on the layer with the old typography, so make sure you don't move anything once you've got the black layer complete, and you're just having fun. I guess it's like Play-Doh. Just select what you want, change the color, select what you want, change the color, and you repeat this until you have a complete color image. I went ahead and added in some pink tears because why not, and plus it just matches the rest of the image. Now that's designed for the front complete and it's ready. Later on, I add some displacement maps to the green because it just looks a little bit too plain for me. But essentially, that's how you make this whole Jesus piece. This is the main sort of section. Now, I want to make this artboard the working file artboard. So I'm going to group everything that's complete, add in a new artboard and transfer it on to the second artboard because this is the complete design. On this artboard, I'm going to keep everything still there. And I call this the working file or the working artboard because when it comes to print, I can just have that file that's complete and export the artboard as a PSD, PDF, PNG, whatever. Now referring back to design 1 where we had the typography, we're just going to go ahead and copy that onto the same artboard and just introduce a new slogan or new word. This is why I said to keep this file active and make a duplicate of it, because now you have a back design basically complete. Just change the words, add a new slogan, and bam. Now if you take a look at my layers panel, you can see that I've just basically duplicated the type layer multiple times and introduced different words from the slogan, "Forgive me, Lord, for I have sinned," because it looks much better this way. And I'm just going for a more stacked, boxy look because it matches the fit of the garment that we're making. Now I'm just going to basically add in some stars from the Oasis star pack. It's just a basic generic star. You can make this in Illustrator if you wanted to, and I'm going to be duplicating this multiple times just by using the selection tool in Photoshop and making bigger versions, smaller versions, just to make it look like it's like a shooting star back. And this is a very popular style, especially with this whole, I guess, look. Finally, I'm just going to group everything once I have that design complete, convert it into a smart object, and then go to selection and select the color range, which is black, and then fill that in and then change the color to pink. And before we do that, I did make a new artboard because I want to put the complete back design on a new artboard. I want to go ahead and finally edit this layer with the green on it and add a displacement map. And I'm much happier on how that's looking now because it looks intentionally rough and not just rough and ugly. And that's back design complete. We're going to take the same styles that we learned in this and make a custom cross, and also introduce the Isaiah 26:3 into a separate layer so we can go ahead and add it to some pants. Once that's complete, we can go ahead and add these onto mockups, but first you can go ahead and make it more grunge by using a texture and layer mask to cut out some of the image, make it look torn and ripped up like it's meant to be washed. Once that's all complete, make sure your artboards are put on transparent, and you can either export these as PNGs or make the mockups in Photoshop. But for me personally, I like to make the artboards transparent and then add them into my library and then drag them into Illustrator that way, where I make all my technicals and mockups. To close it off, I'm going to be using the Design by Will technicals, and I'm going to be using the pro version, but the normal ones are perfectly fine for this because you're not really changing the garments, you're just filling in the colors. Go ahead and drag in your designs. I just use the libraries like I said before, but if you have PNGs, you can do it that way too. And just play with the placements and how it's looking and make sure it's looking clean. Now from here, you can go into your swatches panel and change the color by using the direct selection and selecting the color layers and just selecting the fill and changing the fill to whatever color you want. And I have these colors isolated for the flares and certain pants options because it's easier to change the colors this way, and I made it easy for you guys to change the colors. Just using the eyedropper tool, I'm going to select the green from the hoodie, and you can see how it's looking. It's looking nice and clean. After adding in the leg design and the custom cross design, I decided to change the color to pink because it just matches the front design a bit better on the legs, or not on the legs, sorry, on the pants. And you can go ahead and select your object and use the live paint selection tool to color in certain sections of the hoodie. I love using the live paint selection tool. The only annoying part about using it is because you can't select or move around your object without using the live selection paint selector tool, which is very, very strange to me. And I came up with this mock-up that looks clean. It's just basically the hood and the flare that has color. I ended up removing the color on the cuffs because it was a little bit too much color for me, and the mock-up was complete. So let me know what you guys think about this design. What would you rate it out of 10? I think I give this one a solid 6.5 out of 10. It's not what I'm into, but it's very popular in terms of style, so it would do really well in the TikTok market. But let me know in the comments, what would you change about this design? How do you feel about it? And also, if this video helped you, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys when I see you. Love you guys. Peace.